But what I've seen over these months is that every time they make progress and they move closer and closer to that hope for peace, the warmongers in the deep state step up and try to do everything they can to stop them. And do so specifically in this case in order to try to pull the US military into a direct conflict with Russia, which is ultimately what the EU and NATO want. We cannot allow this to happen. Eisenhower issued this warning because he understood the power of the influence of the military-industrial complex and how those who seek to keep us in a persistent state of war deny the heavy cost that it takes in human lives, in taxpayer dollars, and in the erosion of our liberties, wars that have nothing to do with ensuring our security or our liberty. Now, this is something that we're dealing with right now in real time. As you know, President Trump has been persistently and relentlessly pursuing a peace deal to finally end the war between Russia and Ukraine. He talks frequently about the need to end the killing and the bloodshed, and his teams are negotiating now as we gather here. But what I've seen over these months is that every time they make progress and they move closer and closer to that hope for peace, the warmongers in the deep state step up and try to do everything they can to stop them. Predictably, they use the same old tactics that they've always used. The deep state within the intelligence community weaponizes intelligence to try to undermine progress. They leak it to their friends in the mainstream propaganda media to try to spread this and push a false narrative. They foment fear and hysteria as a way to justify the continuing of the war and their efforts to undermine President Trump's efforts towards peace. And do so specifically in this case in order to try to pull the US military into a direct conflict with Russia, which is ultimately what the EU and NATO want. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to see clearly what's happening before our very eyes and stand united in this cause of peace. I've served in the Army now for almost 22 years. I'm grateful to serve. Thank you. I've deployed twice to the Middle East and once to East Africa as part of a joint special operations task force to go after Al-Qaeda in Somalia. But during my first deployment to Iraq in 2005, I served in a medical unit in a base about 40 miles north of Baghdad. And shortly after arriving there, I was walking around our camp, trying to familiarize myself with the place, when I was stopped in my tracks by a sign that someone had put up at the gate where most of our security patrols went in and out of every single day. And this is inside the camp. Just before they left every day, they saw in big block letters the words, "Is today the day? Is today the day?" This ever-present reminder that any day could be our last. This was true. In the height of the war in Iraq, in the middle of a war zone, for some of my friends, for too many of my friends, their time came. They made that ultimate sacrifice. And it was hard. Hard to lose those who were a part of our military family, those who I knew were willing to lay their lives down. One of my friends was named Staff Sergeant Tiai. He was just a few days away from being able to go home to American Samoa and to see his wife and his kids. They were making plans for what they would do during his 2 weeks of R&R. And he was killed when a roadside bomb exploded underneath his vehicle as they were approaching their return to base. I really struggled with his death. We weren't very close, but he was part of our family. And I prayed a lot. I asked God for clarity and for strength and for understanding and peace, and taking shelter in God's love and having faith in him was where I found that peace.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.